Good afternoon, everybody. So nice you're here on a hot day. So I believe we've had quite a fill of mythology, and Anand is running here from another session. But again, mythology is always interesting. And there are so many retellings, and we have scope for so many more. So today, we are talking about myths that still breathe. The session, it hopes to explore how myth continues to be a living, adaptable form in contemporary Indian writing and offering new ways of thinking about power, gender, ethics, and desire, as you can see across the so many books we have from 3 writers. And their retellings, their revisions, and their reworking of the books of these panelists show how ancient narratives are made to speak urgently to the present. So I'll start with Indra Das. Indra Das is, strictly speaking, not a myth rewriter, but he is a speculative fiction writer. And why don't you start talking about your books first? You have 2 books out, and they are not quite myths, but...
Thank you all for coming. So, can you hear me? Yeah. So my first book was called The Devourers, and it kind of takes the Western mythology and folklore of werewolves and transplants it to India. It starts with a professor in Kolkata meeting a person who claims to be a werewolf, and then I wrote this story in college. It started with me going to a music festival, a Baul festival, and it was a winter night. You know, the festival in Kolkata, the Baul festival, goes on for the whole night, and back then at least, it used to be a very kind of informal thing. Lots of people would come and just like get drunk and just listen to the music all night. And I was there with my friends. It was a cold night, misty night, and I was listening to this music, and there were these stray dogs running around the field, and they were hunting this little kitten who had come to our feet. And I took this kitten and tried to protect it as much as I could. And while listening to this music and holding this kitten and kind of seeing these dogs run around the field trying to track this kitten, hunt the kitten, I imagined what it might be like to be in that spot hundreds of years before, and imagine these monsters in the darkness. And so that's how the idea came about. And when I wrote this story, I wrote it in college in the US, and I gravitated to the werewolf myth, and then the whole book became a question of why I wrote about werewolves within India, and it became a question of what was this werewolf doing in India, and then that kind of expanded into an exploration of how fluid mythologies are across the world. You know, there's this syncretism, there's a multicultural tradition of shape-shifting in every mythology that you can find, and you have this idea of humans or gods turning into animals or humans turning into gods. There's mythology is about the fluidity of our imaginations and how we perceive the world as human beings. As a species, we're so unique in a way, or at least as far as we can know. We can't know the imaginations of animals, but we do imagine their lives as well. So, we have this endless curiosity, but also this destructiveness, and mythology deals with that. Mythology is all about kind of reckoning with our godlike power. Gods spring from human imagination, and they reckon with the influence we as a species can have on the world. We have that power of language, and it can truly shape so many things in horrible ways and beautiful ways, and art is part of that as well. So the Devourers is about that. Mythology is how they are contiguous across cultures, across time, And my latest book is The Last Dragoness of Beaubazar. It's a much shorter book. It's about a family of refugees from another reality who live in Kolkata, and it's a coming of age set in the 90s and early 2000s. And this family comes from a culture of dragon riders, and they worship dragons and have a close bond with them. So again, it became a book about multiculturalism, because Kolkata has various diaspora populations, and I wrote it during the pandemic, during the peak of the pandemic, when we were in lockdown, and there was this extremely racist reaction towards the Chinese diaspora in Kolkata because of COVID, and people were blaming them, and people were boycotting Chinese restaurants. And Chinese Indian cuisine in Kolkata is a very unique thing. It's a very syncretic thing. So I wanted to write about a diaspora population in Kolkata, and again, like I read about the mythology of dragons, and you have different forms of dragons, again, all across mythologies, Naga. In China, you have the serpentine dragons, the seven kings. In Europe, you have, the classical dragon that has been adopted by pop culture. So again, you have these similarities throughout mythology, because human imagination clings to certain symbols, and so I ended up writing a story again about what might be considered a Western mythology, but I wanted to situate it within India, and again trace the fluidity of how cultures interact with each other across history and time and cultures. Yeah.
That was interesting, Andra. And I come to Kavita now. Kavita's mythological retellings are feminist retellings of mythological characters, both from Ramayana and Mahabharata. And she has curiously titled them, not quite talking about the individual by name, but talking about their relative spouses or parents or some sort of relative who is the hero or the anti-hero, like Bhima's wife and Karna's wife. So tell us a little more about your books. You have 9 books to credit right now.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. You are talking about the apostrophe S. Yes. Is that what you're saying? Yes, I think it became sort of a branded signature statement as such. It started off with Karna's wife, because I think when it was my debut book, and most people thought Karna was a bachelor, and that curiosity level was there, that did Karna have a wife? Anyway, I think the second book, when I decided to write on Urmila, I think I named it Sita's sister chiefly because, again, no one knew that Sita had a sister called Urmila, that Lakshman had a wife called Urmila, and they were related. This whole thing of, of course, there are some people who definitely knew about it. So it became, I realized, since I'm writing about these largely overlooked characters, they are not known. My biggest problem was the name is slightly vaguely familiar, but people really do not know about them. Most of them don't know about him. Like Bhim's wife, I think many did not know that Hidimbi is his wife. She predates Draupadi. So I think, yes, it is a little subversive. Like many people ask me, why don't you write a book called Hidimbi, and why should it be Bhim's wife? On Ahilya, it was Ahilya's awakening or something. But what I'm trying to say is, because of the ignorance and a little, people are not familiar with this character. They vaguely know ek Hidimbi shayad hogi. She might be there. North, I think Hidimbi is known. I'm not too sure about South India, where, Tara, I had this problem with Tara, but Tara became a huge success because Tara was known. But in the North, Tara was not known. The thing is that I had to keep explaining that Tara is Vali's wife, and she's who happened to marry Sugriv also. So I think it essentially arises out of, honestly, it arises out of, it's sort of what the publisher said, something, the books will just languish in anonymity because these characters are not known. And that is extremely ironical because I am writing about overlooked, neglected women in our stories because, yes, they have been hidden, they have been in the shadows, and I try to give them a certain voice, a certain complexity, a certain depth, a certain agency, which they all actually had, but we don't know about. So there are 9 books. I'm not going to enumerate all the 9 ones, but I think the common thread going through them is that all of them have been sidelined for various reasons. They have, they are either secondary, or they are deficient, or they are plain villains. They are vamps. It's like.
Can you just name them one by one? Karna's wife.
Karna's wife, Urmila. I'm not naming
name
the
the
titles.
wives. Name the wives. The names.
The titles you want?
Not titles. The name of the women you have written about. Just
okay. Karna's wife I've written on Urvi. She is fictitious, by the way. I took one giant creative leap for that, though there are a lot of women characters. Second is Urmila. Third is Menka. Fourth is... Help me. Fourth is Surpanaka.
Yes.
Fifth is Satyavati. Sixth... Hey, I feel like I'm doing maths.
No.
Saraswati, Tara, and
You've got
Hidimbi. I think I missed out
them.
on one. I don't know who it is. So, anyway, so the whole thing is that I think I wanted to tell their stories honestly because I think they have not been told. We hear about their spouses, their brothers, their sons. You know about Hidimbi because she's Bhim's wife, she's Ghatotkache's mother. But who is she? I mean, she was a woman of the forest. She was the forest. She was untamed, beautiful, and nurturing. This whole thing about Hidimbi being a withering, whimpering wife. No, she doesn't sort of pine for Bhim when he abandons her. She knows her reality. And she creates her own kingdom. She raises a son not just as a boy. She raises a son as a warrior, as a hero who's eventually going to be martyred in the war. So I think each of these women had a story of their own. They were there for a particular reason with huge, they cast a very long shadow. But unfortunately, they remain in the shadows themselves. So I think this apostrophe S was very ironic, very subversive, but I think very necessary also.
Coming to Anand, I think he doesn't need an introduction, nor do his books. Because we have all of the books in Malayalam right now, isn't it?
Almost all.
Almost all of them. Plus, you've already written one in Malayalam as well.
Yeah.
And Anand has talked about the powerful anti-heroes, but speaking from their point of view, so which brings them to light in a very different way. And I think I'm sure Asura and all of the books are very popular here. You have them right next door. But I'll ask you about the women characters you wrote in Ramayana. Since we're speaking about women.
Yeah, Valmiki's Women in English,
yes.
which has another 2 stories more than Pen Ramayanam. I originally wrote it in Malayalam and then I rewrote it in English rather than translating it. Because idioms and syntax of the language keeps changing, you cannot directly translate. Since I only had written in Malayalam, I thought I'll rewrite it, think in English and write. So it has a different flavor and style in English, even though the story and the plot are the same.
But why did you choose exactly those women?
Actually, I am writing a series. So next book which is coming is Vyasa's Women, where I'll be in 2 parts. So almost around 20 women from Mahabharata, all as short stories. Because I always wanted short stories. I wanted to write short stories, but the era of short stories is gone. Except as anthology, and which doesn't sell as much as novels. There are no magazines now which accepts short stories in India. But it's a very fine art. Every word counts. So I wanted to experiment with short story. And there are characters in Ramayana and Mahabharata where rendering them as a full novel will be a bit challenging. Of course, some can be done. But there are minor characters, but then I will miss out on them. Only the same problem with Kavita faced, or Kavita didn't face, the publishers faced. In the sense that the unknown characters, how will people know? It becomes doubly difficult. But once I put Valmiki's Women, I can write about any random character from Ramayana. So I chose Mantara, which not much has been written. Manthara is chose. So Manthara not just in one Ramayana, it is scattered across various Ramayanas. So I had to pick and choose from them and write the story of Manthara. Shanta's Rama's sister, it doesn't appear in Valmiki Ramayana except in the northern rendition of Valmiki. There are 3 Valmiki Ramayanas. If I am right, more could be there, but there are 3 recensions of Valmiki Ramayana. One is in the north. It is ironically it is in the northern recension that Shanta appears just by name. The more of Shanta is there in Ramayana's, Mahabharata's Ramayana. So Mahabharata, in the Vanaparva, the entire Ramobhakhyana is there. The entire Ramayana is written by Vyasa also. Because he had a much bigger canvas, he could write even Ramayana apart from Mahabharata. So Ramayana, in a concise version, Vyasa has written. In that, more details are there which are not there in Valmiki Ramayana. Incidentally, M.T. Vasudevan Nair sir took it from the Vyasa's Ramayana, the story of Vaishali. But that too, there are 4 or 5 versions available in Mahabharata. So in what M.T. sir took the version, in that version, it is the Ganigas, the Devadasis who go to bring he created a fictional character, Vaishali, among the Devadasis. So it is written that Devadasis had gone and brought Rishyasringa from the forest. But there are other versions in which Shanta herself goes to bring Rishyasringa. So for me, I had read M.T. Sar's, being a Malayali, I had read M.T. Sar's, the classical film of Bharadan and M.T. had done. But when I saw the film itself, it's a fantastic, beautifully written film. It's a classic in Malayalam. At that time, I was no writer, but this spark was always there. I had a problem with the character of Rishyasringa. What sort of person is this, where the Vaishali comes and seduces him, and once he comes to the Angarajya, the king says, marry my daughter. He says, Alva Manapartha kanda parijayilla. He doesn't care about Vaishali at all. He doesn't even think about her. He doesn't search for her. He says, okay, and he marries. I thought it's a big character flow as a character for Rishyasringa. Of course, the heroine was Vaishali. But the character of Rishyasringa, I thought it's not, it didn't sit well with me. It's a great writer who had written. So at that time itself, I thought, if at all I become a writer, I will write about this someday. And I will create this. So I was in search of whether there any versions of Mahabharatas are there. And then I found out there are versions of Mahabharata in which Ramayana is there, in which Shanta herself goes. That Rishyasringa attracted me most. Because that's such a beautiful love story where she goes there. Shanta is abandoned perhaps by Dasharatha, given in adoption to the Anga king. Romapada, both versions come. The name doesn't matter. Romapada appeared a bit cold, so I did Lomapada. Romapada means one having hairy leg. I didn't want to use that. So I used Lomapada. And he goes there to Anga. And for saving the people, she goes to Rishyasringa's place. Saving them from drought. So it gives an agency to Shanta rather than she just being a side character who is just married off to somebody who was madly in love with Vaishali but doesn't care about her the moment she is a princess. So I didn't want that kind of character. So she goes there, their beautiful love story develops, she comes back and rains come, and then Rishyasringa and Shanta becomes the cause of the birth of Rama. And when during the death of Dasharatha had given away his daughter to get sons. He had 4 great sons. None of them were, because of the curse of course, but none of them were with him. It was only the daughter who was with him along with the son-in-law when he was dying. So that brings a poetic beauty, and it also is very modern because this is something which many fathers would have faced across India, where many of the societies, they pin for the son, but ultimately it is only the daughter who matters in the last stage, who are caring for them. So this kind of rounded characters I could place when I do them as short stories, because I can make every word, every sentence, every pause, every syntax, every semicolon count. Which novel you are a bit more lazy. When you write screenplay, you don't care, you just write it's like a guidebook for the director. So where as a writer I get a challenge, it is to do a short story. So the Vyasa's Women is the next. So I made it as that. Thank you.
I was wondering what to ask you because you have been answering so many questions around your books, out of your books, away from your books. I had really, really labored to search for a question for you.
Other words, I have talked too much.
Yeah, she said it in a very long way, but yes, I agree.
Not really. We are very fond of listening to Anand
No,
here.
no, in fact, I was just telling her, it's so nice, Anand is there.
Keep fighting in the stage all across India.
No,
There's a Trivandrum edition here.
That's why it started from Jaipur, now we have come down.
But we never fought, I think. We talked last year for 1 hour at the assembly. Okay, so I'll just come back from him for the same question. Anand, because it is connected to what you answered right now.
You didn't have enough of me.
No,
Okay.
not at all. I didn't have a stage with you this year. Okay. How do you actually choose your characters? You said you come across such a lot of them because you've been researching. So let me know how you research, why you research, and how you choose your characters. Combine that.
I don't research. I search for the characters. Researching is a, last session also I said, researching is a wrong word for a fiction writer. I'm not writing a PhD thesis.
No, it's about mythology. See, mythology, we have the umpteen Ramayanas and the largest of, Mahabharata.
One good thing about Ramayana and Mahabharata is there are so many versions. You first write the story, then you do the research, you will find something to corroborate it. There are so many versions of it. You write any story, ultimately you search. So first you write the story from your heart. Then you search for the story because the editor will ask, where did you get this from? I don't want my publishing house to be closed. So then you, by the time they are editing, I give the sources. It is available. Anything and everything you imagine. So many versions are there. It's a 5,000, 6,000 year old tradition spread across Asia. And there will be one version or other which is available there. So I have been writing multiple versions of Ramayana and Mahabharata simultaneously. Some in television, some as books. That much is available actually. So even contradictory one I used to write. No, like I used to write Vanara, where Bali is the hero. Tara is the hero of my book in that, Vanara, where Tara gets married to, first to Bali, then to Sugriva, then to Bali, then to Sugriva. Actually 4 times, if you really see. Marry in the sense she was with him. That's a bigger argument. So at the same time I was writing Sangat Mojan Mahabali Hanuman for television, where by the evening when I am writing, Bali has suddenly turned into a villain. And Bali is hero in the morning. Both versions I can corroborate with evidences, or not evidences exactly, but references perhaps. So that's the beauty of our Puranas.
So myths do come to us by sort of osmosis, From the stories we have listened to, at least our generation has listened, we have listened to in our childhood, remain with us, and I think this is how they come out through Anand. But Kavita, tell me, how is your research happening? I don't agree that fiction does not need research, because sometimes when the research goes
you are
wrong...
looking for a fight, I think.
Sorry, I'm a fiction writer, so I do it. Especially historical and mythological fiction. You do need to know who is who. I mean, it's like people saying, okay, I read the Ramayana and where did I find Krishna? Okay,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
So
Okay.
it's honestly, I try to stick to the original. I'm a big fan of both Vyas and Valmiki. So I try to stick to the original. And I always, in the back of my mind, I always believe that these are borrowed stories. These are borrowed characters. So when I'm reframing them in a certain narrative, I try to be as honest but as spontaneous as I can. You are asking how I choose my characters. I think characters sort of choose me because it happened. Like I think Hidimbi happened because I had gone to Manali years ago and there's a Hidimbi temple there. And I was very fascinated. The whole fact that we talk about Hidimbi as this Rakshasi whom Bhim abandoned, and here she is worshipped as a goddess, as a person who protected her people, her land. And that's how I think my latest book came about. So that character happened. Same thing with Tara. I think it was just the breathtaking landscape of Hampi. When I went there, then they say it's Kishkin, and then but everyone is talking about Hanuman and Vali and Sugriv. I said, hello, Tara bhi thi na? She was there. So why not about Tara? So it's like this. I try to search the women in these. Now this is a geographical reason, but I think Surpanaka happened because it was a personal challenge to me to write about, first time I was writing about an antagonist, a female antagonist. And that the character herself sort of fascinated me because she is the sister of 3 amazing, very remarkable brothers. and she has her lineage, her parentage. How is she? And we just see her as this plot pusher where her nose is cut off, which incidentally is the most violent episode in the epic. And then what happens to her? So, this sort of, that was why Surpanaka was picked up. Then Ahilya, because I think this whole controversy about, the way we have reduced Ahilya to, and what I think Vyas's Ahilya was a more feisty, definitely a woman with a very strong sexual agency. And I think that is what I wanted to show. Like, not the distorted version as it is. And I think each character, honestly, is something, all of them are interesting. As I said once, that I think all of them deserve a 300-page book and some short stories. So, but something who can sustain my interest for those 300 pages. Like, I don't want to sit and say, oh, I don't have matter on her, because there is no matter. I derive whatever matter, research you're talking about, coming back to your original, is I sort of mold that character according to the major characters and the major episodes and the events around them. So Satyavati was essentially, though she is there for a chronologically very long time, but you don't know anything about her. She's sort of a caricature, in the sense that she's the grand matriarch. But no, she is as responsible as Bhishma to what happened later on. Now, she is one woman who started from the dregs of society, and she rose up she became the queen of Hastinapur. So no, she as a queen, as the most politically powerful woman in the Mahabharata. We rarely see her as that. So I think these sort of reasons were there to choose my characters. Urmila, of course, because this whole thing of, I think she was my favorite character, I have to confess. She intrigued me more than Lakshman and Sita. Fascinated me more than, say, Ram and Sita. So, Lakshman and Urmila, I think, were two sides of the same reality. They were shadows of their siblings, and their stories have not been told. So, their story is a story of separation. It's not story of love at all. Which again is, I think I added a certain contemporary sensibility, that it is modern. Story of, separation in relationship is a extremely common thing. So I think Urmila and Lakshman sort of personify that. So I think characters, yes, all of them are there, but when I'm sort of fleshing them out, they're skeletons, fleshing them out majorly through the events, the episodes, the major characters, and then thoda drama and fiction, joining the dots. And of course folklore, the importance of folklore is also very, because they sort of humanize these characters, the characters which have been deified, sort of, as I said, for me, Hidimbi, she's been deified, and then I tried to humanize her. So that sort of, it's more a self-questioning. It's a journey of just checking out these women who were exceptional in their own way.
When I come to Indra, I think we have to take off from the myths and come to a created reality rather than, So let me ask you, your works seem to be strongly influenced by anime. And I'll add one more question. Why did you choose to write spec-fic?
So I don't think it was a choice as such. When I write, I don't really think about genre. I consider genre a category more for the publishers, and it's it's categorizing for archival and scholarship and marketing, of course. But I love so much art, and there's so many things that influence me, when I write, it all goes in there, like it all pours into the work, and so I like to just try, again, coming back to fluidity. I believe that art is fluid, that genres are fluid, and I try and break down the boundaries between genres as much as I can. But, there have been stories where I've written directly about mythology, but those are usually for anthologies that have a theme that invite you and they tell you, write a mythological retelling. So in that, I wrote a science fiction story that was a retelling of one of the Kali creation myths. And in the story, the story is about a corporate AI deity, and in this kind of virtual world that is open to users, like social media, but a world. And essentially, this corporate deity is attacked by trolls, and it absorbs all this information, this human information that is coming from all these users, and it kind of reacts against the trolls, which and relives one of the Kali creation myths. Of course, there's many. So there are specific moments where I would pick a specific myth, but again, that's when people ask me to. When I'm just writing for myself, it's much more organic than that. Like I just usually start with an image or an idea and then see where it takes me. Like with The Last Dragon House of Bulbasaur, it was a dream that I had, and with The Devourers, it was that experience in the Baul Mela, which I started with, and then kind of created this kind of questioning of how a werewolf might end up in India, and it became about European werewolves migrating to India during the 17th century into the Mughal Empire, and the kind of the ripples their arrival leaves through history into contemporary times, and that's when again Indian mythologies came into it as well, because one of the characters, one of the point of view characters, Sira, she's a Muslim woman, a very poor Muslim woman in the Mughal Empire, and she is raped by one of the European werewolves, and the narrative is about her going after her rapist to try and find some measure of justice, and she does this with another European werewolf, and eventually they get to the Sundarbans, the Delta Forest, and they meet these tribes of Indian shapeshifters, and all these shapeshifters they adopt human mythologies to define themselves. Like they have these second selves that are beastly. But so the tribes in the Sundarbans, they call themselves Rakhoshes, and they kind of mimic the tiger as their totem of choice, unlike European werewolves who mimic the wolf. So it's about, and then they clash, and when I was writing that narrative of them arriving in the Sundarbans, I took from my own experience of going to the Sundarbans, but it just happened organically that Sira ended up, where the European werewolf she's with becomes her companion, not the one that raped her, obviously the one that she was traveling with, and she begins to ride that werewolf, and then the similarity struck me that Bon Bibi, the deity, the Sundarbans deity, who's worshipped by Hindus and Muslims, she rides a tiger, and so in the narrative of the book, she becomes a kind of incarnation of Bon Bibi to the people of the Sundarbans in that era. So this happened completely without me planning it. Like I was writing them arriving in the Sundarbans, and then I realized that this iconography of this woman riding this beast matches exactly with the idols I saw of Bon Bibi when I was when I was in the Sundarbans myself. And there's Dokhin Rai, the other the kind of Rakhosh deity of the Sundarbans also takes the tiger as a totem and as a shapeshifter, and and the people in the Sundarbans, they worship Dokhin Rai as well. So it's all very 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 open. All these stories change all the time, as you were saying. There's so many versions of these stories, and that's one of the beautiful things about both art and mythology. There's no fixed narrative. There's so many narratives. But I think I've wandered completely off from your original question, which was, sorry, what did you? Because I went back to the other question. What?
No, you came to it. Never mind.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah.
But I believe when you finish writing, your world building, it's fitted in with what you planned to write. I mean, it came unplanned, right?
Yeah, it was completely unplanned. Yeah.
And did it help that you were from? Are you from Calcutta?
I'm from.
Yeah. So it's like some things you are familiar. You already have at the back of your mind, So the world.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
The city itself as a setting and whatnot. But for example, getting back to your research question, I did have to do a lot of research
Yes.
writing about the characters moving through the Mughal Empire, because there's a lot of scholarship about the Mughal Empire, but it's usually focused on the courtly classes and but just trying to find narratives of normal people living on the street level and what life was like on the street level in the Mughal Empire at that time was actually very difficult. Like I had to really search very hard, and I read a lot of books.
It came from books, I think. Your documentation, you found the documentation in books rather than in archives, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There were some archives as well, but most of it came from books, and also excerpts of of writing from the era, like of people writing about the Mughal Empire who were living in the Mughal Empire at the time. So it was very fascinating, and I learned a lot. And it's all gone now. Like I completely forgotten all of it. But when I read even bits and pieces of that book, I think, I cannot imagine writing this again. But it was only because I was in university at the time, had access to a lot of scholarship and libraries, so that helped a lot. Yeah. But there was a lot of research. I mean, the daily life in the Mughal Empire, that was very difficult to fix down. And I did. And this is the liberty that fiction writers have, like I did make up a lot of it, and you fill in the gaps and create a world of your, as you said, create a world of your own, and that applies to any fiction of any genre. You are creating a world, no matter even a realistic story. You are creating a world that is, an imitation of our reality, but it's still your own separate world.
Yeah, but I would like to address this to both Anand and Kavita. Because you both are still, like you have a lot of stuff to fish out from both the Ramayanas, all the Ramayanas available, the very, very large Mahabharata and the various Mahabharatas within and without the various epics that surround, plus the Puranas. The Puranas don't actually come to us so fast. I mean, I don't think we listen to stories from the Puranas at home. We are told mostly from Mahabharata and Ramayana, I think. But we have the folklore, the regional folklore. Last day there was a book release here. It's about the Parayapetta Pandarigalam. And from Prema Jayakumar brought out a book for children, retelling it, Parayapetta Pandarigalam, for children, under the title 12 Children. I think the Malayalis here will probably know what that is about. But there are regional folk tales like that. Like Panchatantra, of course, it came across almost all parts of India. But did you explore anything like that for your retellings?
Yeah, definitely. As I said earlier, I think the folklore is which makes the stories more colorful, more relatable, because they humanize them. They are very democratic. They make us, it's like those people we are leading their lives, they are leading our lives. So, folklore, I tell you, like Surpanaka's story, the premise I took was from a folklore which says that she actually used Ram and Lakshman to take revenge on Ravan. Now this story actually completely turns the story on the head, and then I really had to go really rewind as such, respool her life, because what is it that made her hate Ravan so much that she had to use Raman, so that actually becomes a natural narrative for me. So this was one. Then even Ahilya. See, the Ahilya's original story that she was created by Brahma and she was perfection. But again, sort of humanized her here. There was a story about she actually being a Panchal princess. It is in the Harivamsha Purana, I think so. Which again very humanized her. She had a brother who was friends with Indra. Then they had a fight. There was a war for the river, for the land. So, and then she meets the rishi. This whole thing was, the whole story, it takes a completely different turn. When the folklore, the Purana actually distill stories, sort of completely change. When one story which is there in the Ramayana changes in the Mahabharata and is actually completely different in the Purans. So now this entire chronology or the way the character arc or the story arc is there. I think it depends how you pick it. So, or even with Saraswati, I've written a book on Saraswati. Now, Saraswati is only mentioned in the Rig Veda. That's so ancient that her stories, whatever folk stories I could pick up about her, that I did not agree with the fights which she has with Lakshmi. I think I do not believe that, this whole narrative of women being women's enemies, I think it's completely untrue. Because I think Lakshmi cannot exist without Saraswati and Saraswati cannot exist without Lakshmi. So it's a very extended metaphor about these two parts of facets of womanhood. And the third is, of course, Shakti. So here what I was trying to say, these folk stories actually make these stories very simple and relatable. They tell the story, or the thread about Draupadi and Karna. It's a very strong folklore in Maharashtra. Yeah, so that sort of a thing. So, just that is what makes it more personally for me, and I try to color it that way.
Anand, I'm asking you this question once again. I asked this in the last venue, but how do you actually do your world building? Does it, as a writer who visualizes scenes, you can visualize the scene and the happenings, I suppose, but how about the characters? How do you build the characters?
So basically, is it working? Okay. Yeah, same only. See, basically, one statement you made that we usually take it from Ramayana and Mahabharata is strictly not true. We take from a lot of Puranas, and not just on Ramayana and Mahabharata. Like the entire Bahubali universe it created, it had nothing to do with Ramayana and Mahabharata, but drawn from various Puranas and folk tales. I have even used Mamangam as Mahamagam in my Bahubali series, the Mamangam's legends. Basically, about the world building, one of the things which I do is to create, like even the new book Mahishasura, which I launched recently, I took it from Tamil folklore and Tamil Sangamara literature, the legend of Kumarigandam, and build on it. The entire thing built on it with the legend of that. The story world is already there, but in that it goes to a next level of world creation, in the sense I am imagining Asura world with 6 suns. The entire thing has a simulation of Maya, using the Mayavada, and only Satyaloka being the true world. So it goes into the science fiction fantasy mode. But to bring characterization, it is very easy if we don't follow the Aristotle model of 3-act structure and all those things, which complicates the storytelling. I don't know how many people who have learned the storytelling or literature in college. I didn't learn it, thankfully. I did engineering. Who have learned literature or these things, they would have been taught the Aristotle's model, poetics, the 3-act structure, then the hero's journey. Throw away all these things, you can tell much better story, because there is an Indian way of storytelling. The Indian way of storytelling, which you find the characters flows by itself, you just define some core dharma of the character and just keep throwing events which become totally opposite to his dharma. Put him in dharma sangat, he or her in dharma sangat, the character evolves by itself. So Yudhishthira's character, for example, his dharma, he defines his own dharma as he is the son of dharma. I will never say a lie. I will follow the Kshatriya dharma and put on dharma sangat. So he keep on thinking about it. The character evolves by itself, sometimes weak, sometimes strong. But as a Kshatriya, if he invites for roll of dice, I have to go and lose everything. Naturally flaws. That is the easy way to create character. It's a big subject, but simple way. Give a dharma to the character. Ram has a dharma that he will do all these things. During Sita Parityak, the entire thing is questioned. The story evolves by itself. As simple as that. No act, no 5-act, 6-act, 3-act, 4-act or any act. Just plain story, character, dharma and dharma sangat. It's a simple answer.
I think Chimamanda Adichie said it right in a different context about the danger of a single story. we are arguing with the danger of several stories, each contradicting each other. But that's the beauty of myth and retelling of myths. Thank you, and I think we are open for questions now, if there are any.
Hello, Kavita ma'am. I just want to draw your attention to the book written Ravan by Amit Tripathi. There where he tries to bring in a situation where the battle actually took place because of the ideology difference between Vasishtha and Vishwamitra on who has to be made the Vishnu, whether it is Ram or Sita. And in that book, it is very clearly mentioned that Ravan had no much, a love loss for his stepsister Shurpanaka. But in your book, you bring in a statement that, because it's Shurpanaka's chopping off the nose, that becomes one of the reasons for the war between Ram and Ravan. Now, are these again, as concluded by Suneetha ma'am, that contradictions of the myth make it more reading easy, or but it confuses the readers when we read so much of, books from different authors. So what do we get from this?
I think, honestly, my only thing is you read the originals. Because you have to remember, this is mythofiction. So we have dramatized the whole thing. So we are we are joining dots and trying to make a certain rational story. If you're asking about me, now the Vishwamitra and Vasishtha, I think that feud is actually I've used in Menka's, my Menka book, because that was what really sort of triggered Vishwamitra to become a... Yes, so I mean, this story, as I said, the stories themselves change. Like we are changing in them now, fine. But the stories, as I said earlier, they change. What is there in the Ramayana changes in the Mahabharata. And then in the Purans, they are different. So this thing, I think actually they are talking about how these stories are seen with fresh perspective. So I think if you are just confused, just go to the original and see how things have changed. What is the new perspective, what is the new angle that particular writer has said. So I think, as I said, I believe they are the best storytellers. As Anand said, I think what Vyas and Valmiki have done, you name any emotion, any experience, any situation, any problem, any issue is there in these two epics. And we don't have to search anywhere else. And I think this alternate, as you said, alternate retelling is actually an expression of speech, freedom of expression which each writer, whether he's a musician, any artist used to have. It was just not in literature. You see it in paintings, music, temple architecture. Each story is interpreted in a certain way. It's not a template at all, where it has to be, you have to follow. No, I think that is the beauty of the epics. And that's why I think it's so palpable. It's a living. We are living them. It's not, we didn't allow it to die.
Suneetha ma'am has another session now, so take your leave, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Anand sir. Right now in Indian market, I'm seeing most of these books are about myths and retelling the different myths. So do you think we as an Indian market are ready for new myths, new kind of myths?
The thing is that the literature, the Puranas, compared to say Greek or Norse mythology, which are all great, they stopped developing 2000 years ago because the culture themselves changed. We have been writing and rewriting until today, or tomorrow also we continue to do that. So it overwhelms the entire thing. But you can find mixture like what I tried to do in Mahishadra as a science fiction set in 70,000 BC about AI. So it's a different take, taking Devi Bhagavatam, mixing it with Sanghara literature and thinking it like a Mahishasura as artificial intelligence created by a alien civilization which invaded, which resulted in the sinking of Kumarigandam. So that way we will slowly do it. But of course there are, like Indra is doing, new myths are being created. But this is so overwhelming that it will take a lot of effort to do this, because imagine the size of the Ramayana itself. My many Ramayanas book, almost 1,000 Ramayanas I have compiled it, folk tales, and that is not even 5% of what is available. Mahabharata is endless. Over that you have 18 Puranas, 108 Upapuranas, many Sthala Puranas. Over that you have the Buddhist mythology, Jain mythology, then Indo-Persian literature, then literature in all the classical languages in India, plus folk tales, plus the Vedic and Upanishadic story, Brihat Kada, then Kada Sarit Sagar. It's an ocean. How will you escape this? It's a problem. Or that's a wealth or treasure of what we have.
Hi, ma'am. My question is to Kavita, ma'am. Ma'am, here. Ma'am, our epics and myths are often shows the mobs or assemblies commenting, okay, passing down judgments on a woman character based on this rigid notion of purity. Let it be Sita, Ahalya, or even Draupadi. In this current era of social media trails and the digital justice, do you think that we are repeating the ancient mistakes again? And how can the retelling of this myth help us break the cycle of public shaming of women?
I think we are making these mistakes because we have been seeing we have lost sight of the original stories. The original stories have sadly been sort of distorted with a very certain patriarchal domination. It's a very myopic way because you are only seeing the men. It's men's point of view, it's men's stories, it's men's life, it's their honor, it's their values. The women are not seen at all. I mean, they are there. There's Sita, there's Draupadi, and the story. I mean, see how the story of Sita changes, or the story of Ahilya changes. The story of Ahilya original is she knew she was with Indra, and she went ahead, and she was brave enough, or she had a certain conviction that she was ready to face the consequences of that particular action. Here, the whole thing it got reduced that Indra rapes her. There is no rape. It is completely voluntary. Now, are we ready to, in today's world, are we ready to accept that original story? Or the story of Shakuntala? Shakuntala is no damsel in distress at all. She is a girl from the forest. She meets a prince who happens to be passing by. They have a Gandharva marriage. The next morning he leaves with certain promises that he will come back. He doesn't come back. She's smart. She's sensible enough to realize that she had been taken for literally a ride, and she realizes she's pregnant. She raises her son. She is the first single mother, and she raises her son. And when the son is 12 years old, he asks her who my father is, and that is the time she introduces him to Dushyant. It is not what we know what Kalidas has written. Why did Kalidas sort of change the story? Because he was a royal poet. He couldn't show the king in a bad light. So what I am trying to say is how this story changed. And these stories changed because they got reflected and reinforced because of these misogynic and definitely patriarchal definitions. So what we are seeing now is just a percolation of that. So I think it is, yes, we have to revisit the story, revise the stories, because we have to see the women in these stories also. And yes, they were not meek women. Sita was not a demure wife. She was a very determined wife. This whole thing of everyone, it's about just women. It's about the diversity of women and the diversity in each and every woman. That sort, which is so different from the limited conventional image we see a woman. Most of the women in mythology not in mythology, ancient text as. We generally see them we prefer seeing them in conventional roles, or then we see them as villains. So I think, as I said earlier, they are either secondary or they are vampish. So we have to see them in a new light.
Hi, my question is to Mr. Indra Das. So in the book Devourers, the shapeshifters or the monsters, they're in popular culture. I'm not saying in popular culture, but then within the reader community of Devourers, these monsters are often portrayed as living dual lives, and there is a sort of hidden secret life, and so this kind of concept. And I've also listened to people interpreting it as comment on colonial concepts of as an identity concept, queerness, relating it to queerness and all. So was this intentional, or is this what people perceived later?
No, it's very intentional, but I mean, not from the beginning. Again, when I started the story, I didn't start with ideas of, this is going to be about this or whatever. I just wrote and saw where the characters took me, etc. In the beginning, Alok, the the main character in the present day narrative was not queer, but in the final version of the story, he ends up like that is where the narrative takes him, and he comes out of the closet after interacting with this shapeshifter culture that's hidden. So it is intentional, very much so. It is a book about queerness as well, and queerness in India. And again, I think that's another aspect of mythology that is sanded down. There's so much queerness in our myths, and it's very, very sanded down in all the stories that are popularly reproduced. So yes, very much an intentional thing. Thank you very much.
It's time to wind up our session. Please give them a round of applause for this very insightful session that we had here.